You often hear how we need to spread democracy into the world because it gives people the freedom of choice. Well, you are going to learn today that this so-called democracy doesn't need to be spread anywhere in the world. The American voting system is one of the most powerful forms of manipulation because it allows you to think you are actually making the choice of your elected officials. Why? Because they tell you anybody can become president here. Look at you saying, I raised my kid up real nice. One day they just might become president of the United States of America. We hear that a lot, don't we? Well, let's look at the 3 requirements. What are the 3 requirements to be president? Number 1, you must be a natural born citizen. 2, you must be 35 years old. And 3, you must have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. Now, with those generic requirements, tell me why all of the presidents except one, Martin Van Buren, are all direct descendants from King John of England, aka one of the most evil men in history. And for all the new people who are like, that's too long ago to matter, it was only about 849 years ago. Almost all of the presidents being descendants of a king of England doesn't sound very American to me. Let's look at more recent examples. A current example is Obama. He has 6 U.S. president cousins, both Bushes, Ford, Johnson, Truman, and James Madison. Let's not forget he is also related to Cheney, Bush's VP. Oh, and we can't forget Obama's 12th cousin, Jay Rockefeller. How about election 08, Obama versus McCain? They are both cousins through King Edward I from the 1200s. What about Obama versus Romney? They are both related, being direct descendants from King Edward I. What about Bush versus John Kerry? Both cousins and members of the secret society Skull and Bones. When Bush was asked about it, he said it's so secret he can't talk about it. These members are usually given key positions of power and influence because they have made a pact to push the New World Order agenda. Other big name members you may have known are William Taft, the 27th president, Prescott Bush, the senator and Wall Street banker, George H.W. Bush, 41st president, and then Dana Milbank, who works for the Washington Post. And you better believe he is posting lies. Now, I'm going to use the Bushes and Clintons as examples of how messed up this election system is. Under Reagan, there was a vice president. That was George Bush Sr. He was a Republican. He was a vice president for 8 years, 1981 through 1989. Then he became president for 4 more years right after 1989 through 1993. Now, one big question I want to ask all y'all, how in the heck were y'all okay with a former director of the CIA becoming president? He was a CIA director. I'm talking about George Bush Sr. That don't even sound right to me. Anyways, 12 years of a Bush. Then we get Bill Clinton, Democrat, for 8 years. That's 1993 through 2001. Then we get another Bush, Republican, for 8 years, 2001 through 2009. What the heck is going on here? In 2007, we get Obama, the black Bush, on the scene running for president against Hillary Clinton. Obama is a Bush without the last name. Remember, he is cousin to George Bush and Sr. Then a Clinton runs against him for the Democratic nomination as if there isn't anybody else who can. Obama during the campaign says, we need somebody new, not Hillary Clinton. He then gets in office and puts Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State. What the heck wrong with him? So far, that's 28 years of Bushes and Clintons. Then Hillary steps down from the Secretary of State for Obama's second term so she can run for the 2016 election. Throughout Obama's second term, all we hear is Hillary going to run 2016? Now she running. And we even got Jeb Bush running as well. That alone should show you how fraudulent this system is. Out of the millions of people in America, we keep ending up with Bushes and Clintons? If you say that's normal, you lying. People make excuses. Well, it's because they have the money, and whoever has the most money has the best chance to win the election. Not only is that not fair, but it goes against the whole anybody can be president thing. It's more like anybody in the bloodline who wants to be a hardcore sellout for Wall Street can be president. That's right, I said Wall Street. Those are the guys Obama said he was against. But Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, for example, wasn't against Obama. They knew his tail was lying. They became one of his top donors and gave over $1 million to his 2008 campaign. They also gave $230,000 to his opponent John McCain's 2008 campaign. They gave over $1 million to his opponent Romney's campaign. And we see they have given Hillary Clinton over $700,000 throughout her career. Also receiving $782,000 from Citigroup, major funding by J.P. Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, and the list goes on. If these names sound familiar, it's because they are also the same people who funded Obama and Mitt Romney and Bush. This is why no working class person should be giving money to these sellouts. It's a shame that they even ask for donations from us when they are fully funded by these banks. We shouldn't be giving them anything. You can write that down. These candidates, the news says, are the most credible are the Wall Street candidates. They are paid to sell you these puppets. See, they benefit when their paid off candidate gets into office. And that's not just for presidents, but for any other office. What kind of benefits are we talking about? Well, for one, a blind eye gets turned to all of their dirty deeds. For two, they get more money. I mean, like a whole lot of money. I'm talking about numbers that don't fit on a calculator money. In September 2008, the economy crashed and they said we got to bail out the banks so it doesn't get worse and turn into the Greater Depression. So the $700 billion bailout, aka the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, aka Wall Street bailout, was enacted to save the day. First problem with that is the $700 billion. That's a whole lot of money. Second problem, the bill had no oversight and ended up going up to a whopping $29 trillion. And the big banks were more than happy about that. Citigroup getting $2.5 trillion, Morgan Stanley getting $2.04 trillion, Merrill Lynch getting $1.949 trillion, Bank of America getting $1.344 trillion, Goldman Sachs getting $814 billion. Pay attention. Now, the bill was supposed to be for $700 billion. And then you see Goldman Sachs receiving way over that amount with $814 billion. J.P. Morgan Chase receiving $391 billion. And it's funny how they get this money. And then they go on to buy Washington Mutual. Bush, Obama, Romney, and Hillary are all in favor of that bailout. They are all in favor of the Federal Reserve. By the way, while they were bailing out all of these too big to fail banks with trillions of dollars, the Fed also paid the big banks to not lend money to the public, the broke people. They worked out a nice deal that if the big banks deposit the money in the Federal Reserve, they can earn a 0.25 interest on that money. We're talking about the money that they're not loaning to you. That's more than you get paid in your savings account. How much money are we talking? I'm talking about $1.6 trillion that they are keeping in the Fed and not loaning out to the people so they can make $4 billion of interest a year. Now, before I explain the Federal Reserve, you must know the 2008 collapse of the economy was a manufactured collapse and that it was planned in advance. Information was leaked out that this would happen in the exact month of September 2008. It's going to happen again. But way worse, and you can thank the Federal Reserve. The creation of the Federal Reserve was a power move by the Illuminati bloodline families to gain full control of the money supply of America, to then gain full control over the money supply of the world. You with your crazy conspiracies. They don't say that on the news. They don't say that at my school. Shut up, Joker. There's a reason for that. The real truth of the matter is that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. And that was a quote from U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933. What does U.S. President Thomas Jefferson say? The Bank of the United States is one of the most deadly hostility existing against the principles and form of our Constitution. Andrew Jackson didn't like the private central banks either. He's quoted saying, "The bold efforts that the present bank has made to control the government and the distress it has wantonly caused are but premonitions of the fate which awaits the American people should they be deluded into a perpetuation of this institution or the establishment of another like it. If the people only understood the rank injustice of our money and banking system, there would be a revolution before morning." Jackson hated the Bank of the United States, which was a private central bank like the Federal Reserve. The name Bank of United States was a cover to make it seem official. The name really doesn't matter since it's private. It could have been called Chase That Dragon Bank. That might blow the cover though. The Bank of the United States, like the Federal Reserve, bought off candidates, paid them to change positions. Jackson told this to his VP. The bank, Mr. Van Buren, is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. He then vetoed the renewal of the charter for the Bank of the United States on July 10th, 1832. That meant that the bank was done for. Then on January 30th, 1835, the banks really did try to kill him in an unsuccessful assassination attempt. Bring it back. So this backs up what the quote from the 32nd U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt said. The real truth of the matter is that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. President James A. Garfield said, any party which commits itself to paper money will go down amid the general disaster covered with the curses of a ruined people. He was for the gold standard, which restricts the private banks. James A. Garfield was mysteriously assassinated July 2nd, 1881. Why? Well, let's ask the 7th Vice President, John C. Calhoun. A power has risen up in the government greater than the people themselves, consisting of many and various powerful interests combined in one mass, and held together by the cohesive power of the vast surplus in banks. Again, that was John C. Calhoun, the 7th Vice President of the U.S., warning you about these jokers, not some bought and paid for news anchor on Fox News or MSNBC. Not some joker who always slouched on the couch watching TV, eating chicken nuggets, talking about, he just stupid, that's what it is, because I never heard of this. You never heard of this because you be on that couch talking about, quiet down Kardashian zone, looking joker. What is the Fed? The Fed, as we know it, was created from the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Because people were aware of the tricks of the private banks, they were against the big banks. We're talking about in those days. That's why the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was marketed to the public as something that was against the big bad private bankers. So the people would rally Congress for this to pass. The problem with this is that the big bad private bankers are the one who wrote the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Wait a minute. In a secret meeting. Wait, on a private island. Wait for it. Called Jekyll Island. Now how shady can you get? Extra shady if you have people like the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan writing the act outside of Congress for Congress to pass, which gives a private bank the power to print money out of thin air. Doggone it, you might as well give Fat Jason the power to print money out of nothing. Let's just forget we've been using gold and silver as the one true valuable currency for the past 5,000 years. You're going to see why these sellout politicians like the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 so much. Watch this. So the government needs $500 million for whatever reason. They go to the Federal Reserve, Fat Jason, and say, Fat Jason, can you loan us $500 million? We need it really bad. Then Fat Jason writes a check to the government for $500 million and say, here you go. Now remember, you got to pay me back with interest. Here's the big problem. Fat Jason didn't have $500 million in the first place. So how is he giving somebody else $500 million? He just wrote a hot check. And in a normal situation, that check would bounce like rubber and he would be in jail. But that's not happening. We have to pay this joker back with interest after he wrote a hot check. This is why Fat Jason has a lot of friends, because he has the ability to write unlimited checks for unlimited amounts of money and still remain above the law. Sellouts know they can go to Fat Jason and request ridiculous amounts of money, and it won't be a problem because they both know he is just writing fake checks. And then they just print the money out from the fake checks. Break it down. Our money is being created out of thin air. Your dollar exists because somebody asked somebody who don't have a dollar for a dollar. Then they wrote a hot check. Then the dollar was printed. Let's call them hot dollars. Hot dollars represent all of the dollars we have in supply. We work for these, some save up for them, and put them back in a bank. The bank then loans them out and creates more hot dollars. Some people buy stuff with it, and others buy assets like gold, silver, real estate, etc., which is the smartest thing to do since those actually contain value, unlike the hot dollars created out of nothing. Currently, the world's #1 reserve currency, the United States dollar, is a fiat currency. If you are not alarmed by that, you should be. Fiat currency is a glorified object, frequently paper, that has no real value but is used as legal tender because the government says so. Fiat currencies have a 100% failure rate, which means the US dollar that was created from a value of 0 will eventually turn back to 0, which means all of y'all hoarding up dollars are eventually going to have more than enough green toilet paper to get you through life. See, the more dollars that are created out of thin air, the less value the dollar has. Just like when you have a small supply of something in existence like gold and silver, it has more value. The private banks don't like gold and silver as a currency because it restricts them. What to remember about the fiat currency? The private bank's plan is to purposely crash the dollar and crash all other countries who own fiat currencies. They want the world as a whole to crash so they can pose as the saviors and introduce their solution, which is a one world government with a one world religion, which is supposed to justify this in World Bank like the Federal Reserve, but this time in a cashless society where everyone is microchipped and has the money in the chip. This cashless society makes the New World Bank's job easy because they can just type the numbers in the computer to create the money. So you see, the Fed is horribly corrupt. It has no oversight. Nobody really knows who owns it. It doesn't report to Congress, the president, and definitely not the people. It's always writing hot checks, yet it has never been audited. Let's say that again. Out of all of its 100 plus years of existence, the private bank that's supposed to be responsible for our economy has never been audited. Yet people working at the Gap get audited every time they step on the register. What the heck? The government media also sells the Federal Reserve as something that's supposed to protect the economy and consumers. In reality, they are the ones who gave us the Great Depression and took the dollar that used to be worth 100 cents to now being worth only, watch this, 4 cents. That type of stuff shouldn't have happened if we had the Fed. They were supposed to stop that type of stuff from happening. Oh, wait, then I hear somebody. What about JFK? Well, he said something that is not allowed for presidents to say. He said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. See, the CIA plays a key role in ushering in this New World Order. So this is why he was assassinated by the government on November 22nd, 1963. You must understand there is a New World Order agenda. Let's just hear from the former director of the CIA. We have before us an opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, rules all nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping forces to fulfill the promise and vision of its founders. And that was George H.W. Bush. We have the United States of America. Break it down. What is it really? A bunch of states that didn't used to all be together, but they united to become the United States of America, which is controlled by private banks through the Federal Reserve. That's just an incremental step in the big plan. You see, Bush mentioned the New World Order will be run by the United Nations. That's because the New World Order is a world government. Just like the states are united, all the world's nations will be united and called the United Nations of the world, with one world currency, which means there will be one bank like the Federal Reserve controlling all of it. United States of America, 2 United Nations of the world. Stop being naive. If anybody has the chance of controlling the world, it's most likely those with the money. I'll take it even further. If anybody has a chance of controlling the world, it's most likely those who can write unlimited checks for an unlimited amount of money, creating money out of thin air, then taking the money to buy off politicians, universities, scientists, news media, and anything else that's able to be sold. To understand the American election system, you must understand that all the major media outlets have been bought off by the private bankers. It's been this way now and before you were born. They hype up these two parties, Democrats in the blue and Republicans in the red, as the only credible parties who can become president and hold office. They work as a distraction so you don't see the real controllers, that is, the owners of the Federal Reserve. Many know the Fed as the Illuminati Bank. Remember, they print the money and they even remind us that it's their money and we owe them. You see, on the dollar it says Federal Reserve Note, and then on the back it has the Illuminati Pyramid. Both parties act like they are against each other, but like I showed you earlier, both sides are related and receive sellout money from the same big banks like Goldman Sachs. They work as an effective cover for the Illuminati because the masses don't really pay attention to facts. Why y'all be doing that? They just pick a team and root for them like in sports. Your favorite team wears a certain color. Democrats and Republicans have different colors. They corner the masses by saying it's left versus right, which is broadly saying there are only two choices. This is the reality of the left-right paradigm. They prop up the Illuminati, and without them, the Illuminati gets exposed. And see, the parties themselves can't stand alone because people will see how much they suck because there's only one thing to blame. And it will be toppled over by the masses. The masses would then start their own party. That's why both parties lean on each other to block the other parties out. They act as the official opposition to each other. Look at that crap. The news also works to legitimize that in the eyes of the masses. They don't allow any third parties or independents in the debates or general election coverage because it would expose the corrupt two parties. For example, during a debate, you would see Obama saying he would send 5,000 troops to Iraq to keep Americans safe. Mitt Romney would then say, "Oh, you really don't care about keeping Americans safe? I would send 6,000 troops to Iraq." Then Obama would say, "Let's be clear. I will send 7,000 troops to keep Americans safe." Now keep in mind, sending troops overseas in this manner is part of the New World Order agenda, as well as NDAA, Patriot Act, NSA, TSA, which gives full control of the tyrannical government to monitor the masses to keep them from rebelling. Pretty much anything that leads to a New World Order, they both agree on it. That's why you see Congress pass bills without even looking at them. Think about it. And there is no excuse for that. And if there was an independent voice in the debates, it would expose that. Because it would sound like this. Independent voice speaking. I say we don't send any troops over to Iraq to fight and get killed just because the military machine wants to make some money and get power for private bankers. You want somebody over there? Send yourself and your own kids, not other people's kids. Then the moderator would say, "What is that noise? What is that? Did you hear that chinging noise?" Completely dismissing the independent voice. How are people getting caught up in this? Well, both sides are designed to stand for certain causes that are broad enough for the masses to fit themselves into whichever category. If they agree with more of the left's portrayed beliefs, they will say they are Democrats. If they agree more with the right's portrayed beliefs, then they become Republican. Race, social class, gender, religion, and sexual orientation are key tools they use to keep the masses divided against each other so they won't figure out that both parties work for the same agenda.